Ever notice how ads always pop up at the worst moments? When the killer's identity is about to be revealed. During that perfect meditation flow. On Amazon Music, we believe in keeping you in the moment. That's why we've got millions of ad-free podcast episodes, so you can stay completely immersed in every story, every reveal, every breath. Download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite podcasts ad-free, included with Prime.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging back into a story that just, well, it refuses to fade away, the Jeffrey Epstein saga. It's a narrative really woven with these threads of power, secrecy, and profound human impact. And it's definitely resurfacing now with renewed, intense focus on Capitol Hill.
Absolutely.
So this deep dive is all about that latest push for transparency around the Epstein files, and also the, I guess, intricate political chess game that seems to be unfolding.
Yeah, it's complex.
We'll explore why this topic remains so potent, the really powerful voices demanding answers, and actually some truly surprising details emerging from new document releases.
And to help us navigate all this, we've pulled together a stack of recent articles, pretty diverse sources, actually.
Uh-huh.
We're looking at MSNBC, Fox News, CBS News, PBS News, USA Today, The Independent, The Guardian. It gives us a real mosaic of perspective.
A broad spectrum.
Exactly. Fresh revelations, multiple viewpoints, sometimes even, conflicting accounts. It helps build a more comprehensive picture of what's really happening right now.
Okay, so our mission today is basically to act as your guides through all this material. We'll pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, unpack the key players, the political moves.
The survivor testimonies, too, which are incredibly powerful.
Definitely. And even some, intriguing new details about Epstein's time in custody that have come out.
Yeah, there's some stuff there.
So prepare for maybe some aha moments, surprising facts, hopefully a clearer understanding of what's truly at stake. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Let's start with what really ignited this latest push. It seems Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025, was a pivotal day for renewed action on Capitol Hill regarding Epstein.
Yeah.
What exactly happened?
Yeah, that's right. It was a crucial turning point. The catalyst was this bipartisan discharge petition,
Okay.
spearheaded by Representatives Ro Khanna, he's a Democrat from California, and Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky.
Interesting pairing.
It is. And their objective is very clear. Compel the Department of Justice to release all Epstein-related documents, everything, within 30 days.
Wow, okay, and how does that petition thing work again?
Right. So a discharge petition, it's rarely used, but it's pretty potent as a legislative tool. You need 218 signatures from House members.
Right, a majority.
Exactly. That lets them bypass leadership, the speaker, committee chairs, and force a vote on the bill directly on the House floor. And as of that Wednesday, September 3rd, they had 206 signatures.
So really close.
Incredibly close to hitting that magic number. Yeah.
That's fascinating, that procedural move. But like you said, what's maybe even more striking is the bipartisan nature of it. You've got people like Nancy Mace, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, all Republicans siding with the Democrats on this.
Mm-hmm.
What does that convergence tell us? Is it about the issue itself, or maybe something about the political climate right now?
Well, it's definitely notable, and I think it really underscores how, for some lawmakers at least, this issue transcends those traditional party lines. It points to maybe a deep-seated public demand for transparency, for accountability that cuts across ideologies. For these specific Republicans, signing on might be a way to respond directly to their constituents,
Right, tapping into that frustration.
Exactly. Appealing to a sense of justice, maybe some anti-establishment feeling, rather than just, strict party loyalty. It really signals that the push to uncover the full truth about Epstein has this broad, almost nonpartisan appeal in certain political circles anyway.
Okay, so while this bipartisan petition is gathering steam, we see House Speaker Mike Johnson pushing back, advocating for a completely different path.
Right.
He wants to stick with the ongoing investigation by the House Oversight Committee. What's behind his approach? How does he argue it's actually more effective?
Yeah, that's a really crucial distinction in strategy here. Speaker Johnson, he defends the committee's work. He says the DOJ is already complying. They're actively processing. I think the number is around 34,000 documents.
It's a lot of documents.
It is. And his argument is basically that the committee's effort goes further than the discharge petition. His reasoning is they're requesting additional documents, things like files related to the Epstein estate, financial stuff.
Ah, okay. Broader scope.
That's the claim. So he believes Massey's petition is, quote, irrelevant and unnecessary, given this existing broader investigation. He's framing it as more comprehensive, perhaps more orderly, a way to get transparency that allows for a deeper dive than just a big document dump might.
And naturally, Massey has a pretty sharp response to that.
Oh, yeah.
He called Johnson's alternative basically a meaningless vote to provide political cover for those members who don't support our bipartisan legislation.
Pretty direct.
Yeah. So this isn't just like a procedural disagreement. It feels like it highlights a pretty significant internal struggle, maybe, within the Republican Party itself.
Absolutely.
What does this split Massey's push for immediate public transparency versus Johnson's preference for a committee-led process tell us about the different political pressures they're facing, especially, in an election year?
That's a really key question. It definitely exposes a fault line, doesn't it? You've got one side prioritizing what looks like a quick public win for transparency, something that could maybe energize their base with a direct, kind of assertive move.
Yeah, we got the files out.
Right, immediate access for the public. That's the idea. Then the other side, represented by Speaker Johnson, seems to be aiming for a more controlled, perhaps less politically volatile long-term approach through the established channels. More managed, exactly. It allows for maybe more careful processing, potentially a broader scope, like he claims. The insight here, I think, is how transparency itself can be, well, viewed and maybe even utilized for different political agendas, whether it's about speed or thoroughness or just political optics.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit to President Trump's public stance on all this, and also the alleged resistance coming from the White House.
Right.
He has consistently labeled the Epstein controversy a Democrat hoax that never ends. He's also called it totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president. Pretty dismissive.
Very dismissive. And that's been consistent. We've also seen him go as far as suing the Wall Street Journal for, what was it, $10 billion?
$10 billion, yeah. Over-reporting on that alleged lewd, innuendo-filled birthday note supposedly sent to Epstein.
Right. But beyond just the public statements, sources are also reporting these closed-door meetings by people described as sycophants, including the speaker himself, apparently to whip votes against that discharge petition we were talking about.
Actively trying to stop it.
Seems like it. And furthermore, a White House spokesperson reportedly issued a statement threatening, quote, retribution against Republicans who signed the petition, calling it a hostile act to the administration.
Wow. Retribution. That's strong language.
It is. It definitely suggests a concerted effort from the top to discourage support for Massey's initiative.
So, if you connect those dots, it certainly helps explain why someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's usually seen as a staunch Trump ally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why she detailed receiving a lot of pushback from the Trump administration for signing the petition. But she's standing firm.
She is.
Asserting her belief in the cause, and even saying she wants Trump to be the hero and champion on this issue. That's a really interesting position for a close supporter to take, isn't it?
It really is. It suggests she sees a potential political upside, maybe, for the former president in actually embracing this transparency cause, despite whatever the administration's current stance is.
Which inevitably brings up the questions about Trump's own past connections to Epstein. Those always seem to surface in these discussions.
They always do. We know, for instance, Trump was seen in that video leering at women with Epstein. That's out there.
Right.
And he even went on record, gosh, more than 20 years ago now, talking about Epstein's preference for younger women.
Yeah, I remember that quote.
And then you have survivor accounts. Shantae Davies, for example, stated that Epstein was always very boastful about their friends, their famous or powerful friends.
Okay.
And according to her, his biggest brag was his friendship with Trump. She even mentioned seeing an 8x10 framed photo of them together on Epstein's desk.
A photo on the desk. That's quite a specific detail.
It is. It's a very tangible kind of connection that can resonate strongly, with the public, more than just hearsay.
Definitely. And beyond those personal links, there were also some pretty significant actions related to the Epstein case during the Trump administration's time at the Department of Justice, right?
Yes, there were some notable events under that administration's DOJ. For one, the lead prosecutor on the Ghislaine Maxwell team was fired back in July.
Okay, I remember that.
Separately, the Deputy Attorney General at the time, Todd Blanche, who significantly was Trump's former lawyer,
Right, that connection.
he privately met with Maxwell, and subsequently that interview was published.
Which caused quite a stir among survivors, as we'll get to.
Absolutely. And adding to all this, Trump himself has notably refused to rule out giving Maxwell a pardon. He defended his right to give pardons. So these actions, these statements, when you look at them all together, they definitely raise questions for a lot of people about the administration's overall posture towards the Epstein investigation and its key players.
Okay, so against this backdrop, the politics, the alleged resistance, the unwavering voices of the survivors have become just incredibly powerful.
Absolutely central.
On September 3rd, that same pivotal day, there was this really remarkable scene on Capitol Hill. A bipartisan group of lawmakers standing with survivors at a rally, a news conference. It got major coverage.
It really did. It was a truly pivotal moment, drawing huge media attention. And what was so impactful, I think, was how powerfully these testimonies directly countered any attempt to just dismiss the whole scandal as a hoax.
Right, hitting back at that narrative.
Exactly. You had Haley Robson, for instance. She mentioned she's a registered Republican, and she stood up and declared, quite firmly, "This is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma." She even invited Trump to meet her in person.
Wow.
Then Anuska DeGiorgio spoke very bravely, saying, "I have to use my voice, the voice that had been silenced by fear and shame for so many years."
Powerful.
And Marina Lacerda, who was speaking publicly for the very first time, she conveyed this immense pain, this frustration, saying, "Our government could have saved so many women, but Jeffrey Epstein was too important. Well, we matter now."
We matter now. That's...
Yeah. And Liz Stein kind of encapsulated that shared experience, didn't she? Referring to a sorority that none of us asked to join, but we all stand here today stronger together.
That collective strength you hear from them it's really palpable. How do you think seeing and hearing these personal accounts directly, rather than just reading summaries, how does that impact public opinion? And maybe more importantly, the political will on the Hill?
Oh, it's transformative. I really think it is. There's just a profound difference between reading abstract reporting and hearing the raw, lived experience straight from the survivors.
Yeah, it cuts through.
It totally cuts through. Their testimonies humanize the whole issue. They make it impossible to just dismiss as, politics or conspiracy theories. When Stacey Williams emphasizes that sexual violence and trafficking have no political party, it just cuts through all that noise. It frames the search for justice as like a universal imperative. And that direct engagement, hearing those voices, it can galvanize public support, which in turn puts immense pressure on lawmakers to act maybe even beyond their usual partisan lines, because they're confronted with the direct human cost of doing nothing, or worse, obfuscating.
And putting this in a slightly broader context, these personal accounts really highlight the profound, long-lasting impact, don't they?
Absolutely.
Stacey Williams, for instance, she shared her story. Briefly dating Epstein back in '93, claiming she was groped by Donald Trump in his office while Epstein watched a claim Trump denies, we should note.
Right. Important clarification.
She also mentioned Epstein boasting about having video footage of her disrobed. But what's compelling is that her account is reportedly backed up by things like a polygraph test, friends who corroborated her story at the time, and even Trump biographer Michael Wolff confirmed Epstein had told him about the incident.
That corroboration is significant, yeah. And the emotional toll on everyone involved is just so evident. You mentioned Representative Nancy Mace earlier.
Yes.
She herself is a survivor of sexual violence. She actually had to leave a hearing after having a full-blown panic attack triggered by listening to the survivor stories.
Well,
She posted about the immense pain later.
understandable.
And Teresa Helm called that Todd Blanche interview with Maxwell repulsive and triggering. She noted Maxwell used the exact same voice for her lies in the interview as she apparently did when trapping young women.
Chilling.
Yeah. Annie Farmer expressed outrage at Maxwell being transferred seemingly overnight to a spa prison in Texas right after that DOJ interview, questioning the fairness of it all. And of course, we have to mention Virginia Giuffre's tragic death by suicide back in April. It's just such a stark reminder of the devastating ultimate impact this has had on survivors. These aren't just, legal details in a case file. They are deeply personal tragedies.
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately, their collective mission seems to go beyond just getting the files released. It
Yeah.
feels like something much deeper.
It really does.
What do the survivors themselves say their overarching goal is?
Well, like Jess Michaels put it so powerfully, what once kept us silent now fuels that fire and the power of our voice. Their goal really extends far beyond just the documents.
Right.
They want to raise broader awareness about child sexual abuse in general, and they want to achieve accountability and healing, not just for themselves, but really for all victims. They're trying to turn their pain into purpose, aiming for lasting change to ensure what happened to them doesn't happen again.
Turning pain into purpose. Okay,
Mhm.
so let's talk about these elusive files themselves, the ones everyone wants to see.
Right, the actual document.
On September 2nd, 2025, the House Oversight Committee did publicly post thousands of pages, videos too, via Google Drive. But what did that initial release actually contain? Was it the smoking gun everyone hoped for?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit frustrating for people who are hoping for major new revelations.
Wow.
There was pretty significant criticism right away that most of the information released was already publicly available.
Oh, okay.
Representative Robert Garcia, a Democrat, he put it pretty bluntly. He said less than 1% of these files have been released, and of that tiny percentage, 97% of those pages are already in public domain.
So recycled information mostly.
Largely, yeah.
Yeah.
And on top of that, many of the pages that were released were almost entirely redacted, blacked out,
Right.
which, severely limits how much new insight they actually provide. So, yes, thousands of pages were technically released, but the substance of new, previously unrevealed information seems to have been minimal.
So it sounds like maybe a lot of fanfare for not much new substance. For our audience who follows this closely, what's the likely political play here? Is this a genuine, if flawed, attempt at transparency? Or does it feel more like maybe a token gesture, an attempt to diffuse pressure? And how effective do you think it is?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? For many observers, it definitely felt more like a symbolic gesture, like an attempt to say, look, we're doing something, without actually revealing anything truly damaging or substantially new.
Right. Checking a box.
Kind of. The insight here might be that releasing already public or heavily redacted documents can be a tactic. It makes you look responsive to public demands for transparency while you maybe strategically withhold the more sensitive stuff. And for an audience that's already well-informed, like many people following this case are, it's probably largely ineffective in achieving genuine transparency. It might even breed more distrust, honestly, because it highlights that gap between the promise of a release and the actual content provided.
Okay, so given that, what little new content was actually in those release files? Were there any nuggets at all?
There were fragments. Things like years-old court filings, some police body cam footage, recordings and summaries of old law enforcement interviews.
Okay.
For example, there was an interview with an Epstein employee describing very, very young girls visiting the home and how the massage room had to be cleaned twice daily.
Grim detail.
Yeah. There were also documents related to Epstein's Florida prosecution, emails discussing his infamous deal of the century plea deal back then, and one prosecutor's frustration with the defense trying to push for fewer restrictions on him. So these little bits offer glimpses, maybe, but they certainly fall far short of what many people are hoping for, like a comprehensive list or major new evidence.
Which brings us to that very point, the thing that's been at the forefront for years. What about the infamous client list, or just a list of names of powerful people involved?
Right.
Does such a document even exist? Has anything like that been released?
Well, according to the Justice Department and the FBI, as recently as July, they stated that such a client list, or a single definitive names document, never actually existed in their files.
Okay, that's the official line.
That's the official line. However, kind of shifting tactics, survivors are now reportedly considering making their own list of alleged accomplices based on their own experiences and knowledge.
Interesting development.
Very. And this is where Marjorie Taylor Greene's statement becomes incredibly relevant again. She has vowed, quite publicly, if the survivors want to give me a list, I will walk in that Capitol on the House floor and I'll say every damn name that abused these women.
Wow.
And she specifically mentioned congressional House privilege, noting it would protect her from defamation lawsuits for statements made during official floor proceedings.
So using parliamentary privilege to name names.
That's the idea. It's a powerful legal shield for lawmakers, potentially enabling her to bypass legal threats that might silence others.
Okay, another huge point of contention has always been the question of surveillance tapes from Epstein's properties.
Always.
Alan Dershowitz, for one, has denied they exist. But that claim seems strongly countered by other accounts, doesn't it?
It really does. His denial contrasts sharply with several pieces of testimony and reporting. Maria Farmer, who was one of the very first to report Epstein,
Right.
she stated under oath that Epstein had hidden cameras all through his home, not just security cameras, but hidden ones.
Okay.
And beyond testimony, a New York Times report actually published images that appeared to show cameras inside Epstein's Manhattan mansion, including, disturbingly, even above his bed.
Above the bed, okay.
And remember Stacey Williams' account we discussed earlier? She said Epstein himself boasted to her about having video footage of her. So you put all that together, the testimony, the photographic evidence, the alleged boasting, it strongly suggests surveillance could have been pervasive, regardless of what's been officially released or acknowledged so far.
Okay, let's shift now to Epstein's time in custody, because new details have emerged there too, revealing a maybe concerning level of high-level oversight that seems to have, well, gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, this part is critical. It really speaks to potential systemic failures.
What do the Bureau of Prisons emails tell us?
Well, these newly released emails show a direct request from a pretty high-ranking official, the Northeast Regional Director J. Ray Ormond. He asked for daily updates on Epstein.
Daily update.
Daily! Sent to the MCC Associate Warden, Shirley Skipper Scott. And this request came less than a month before Epstein died. It followed that earlier incident, July 23, 2019, where Epstein was found unconscious with an orange cloth around his neck.
So they knew he was a risk.
Absolutely. This level of daily, high-level oversight clearly indicates that authorities were well aware of the risks and also the intense scrutiny surrounding Epstein's detention.
So despite this awareness, despite direct orders even, what actually happened? It seems clear mandates were just ignored.
Exactly that. And the contrast is really stark. There's a supervisor's note to the officers guarding Epstein, quoted in an OIG report, that explicitly mandated checks every 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
And the note emphasized it, quote, as per God, multiple exclamation points.
Wow. You can't get much clearer than that.
You really can't. Extremely clear, forceful instructions. Yet despite that, the OIG found the jail guards failed to conduct the 30-minute checks. And Epstein went unmonitored for over 6 hours before he was found dead on August 10th, 2019.
6 hours.
Over 6 hours. It's just a direct contradiction between the explicit orders and what actually happened or didn't happen.
And didn't Epstein himself ask for protection?
That's another interesting detail from those emails. Skipper Scott noted that Epstein himself requested to be placed in protective custody, the SHU, specifically because of all the media coverage and his notoriety. So he seemed aware of the dangers he faced inside.
And what about his cellmate situation in those final days?
Well, initially, after that first incident, he was placed with a cellmate. That cellmate later claimed Epstein had tried to hang himself, but then apparently recanted that claim. It's a bit murky. But crucially, that cellmate eventually left the unit, which left Epstein alone in his cell.
Which seems like a major breach of protocol for someone considered high risk.
It certainly raises questions. Standard procedure for inmates on suicide watch often involves having a cellmate, or at the very least, much more frequent direct observation, which clearly wasn't happening if he went unmonitored for 6 hours.
And wasn't there something about an unauthorized phone call, too?
Yes. Compounding all this, sometime before his death, Epstein apparently made an unauthorized, unmonitored phone call. He claimed he was calling his mother, but investigators believe it was actually his girlfriend, which again points to a breakdown in standard operating procedures.
Okay, and then there's the whole saga of the missing minute video footage. This fueled so many conspiracy theories.
Oh, definitely.
Former Attorney General Pam Bondi had previously explained that gap in the jail footage as just a routine nightly DVR reset. Technical glitch? Nothing to see here.
Right, that was the official explanation for a long time.
What do the new revelations tell us about that missing minute?
Well, this new revelation completely upends that explanation. A more complete version of the video, the one recently released by Congress, it actually includes that previously missing minute. So it wasn't missing.
Apparently not entirely.
Yeah.
And the footage during that minute shows, well, nothing apparently unusual, which directly contradicts Bondi's explanation that it was just missing due to a technical reset.
Okay, but if it shows nothing unusual, does that settle things?
Not quite, because this newly released footage itself raises a whole new set of questions. Experts who've looked at it say it has much lower quality than previous releases. It's missing metadata, the underlying technical information, and it apparently has different on-screen text formats compared to earlier footage released by the FBI. This leads some experts to suggest it might actually be a screen recording of the original footage, not the raw footage itself.
A copy of a copy, maybe?
Potentially,
Oh.
or something altered. And crucially, the camera's field of view was limited anyway, didn't cover the entire area.
Right.
So it leaves open the possibility that someone could have entered the tier where his cell was without being caught on that particular camera angle. So the missing minute is no longer missing, but the explanation for it has basically been debunked, and now we have new questions about the footage itself.
Exactly. The ambiguity just shifts. Well, the minute is there, its previous explanation is gone, replaced by new concerns about the video's integrity and limitations.
Despite all these lingering questions, all these inconsistencies we've just discussed, what remains the official ruling on how Jeffrey Epstein died?
The official ruling has not changed. It remains suicide by hanging.
Okay.
But, as we know, that conclusion continues to be publicly questioned, most notably by his brother, Mark Epstein, and also by Ghislaine Maxwell herself, which just adds another layer of controversy and fuels the ongoing debate around the conflicting evidence and official narratives.
Right. Okay, wow. We've covered just a tremendous amount of ground today. From those intense political battles for transparency on Capitol Hill
Yeah, a lot happening there.
to the absolutely heartbreaking survivor testimonies, and now these really questionable circumstances around Epstein's final days in custody. As we kind of bring these threads together, what, in your view, are maybe the most critical takeaways for our listeners about this whole ongoing saga?
That's a good question. I think, for me, the most critical takeaway is probably the enduring power of persistent voices, especially survivor voices, when they're up against institutional resistance or silence.
Yeah.
We've seen the bipartisan pressure building on the Hill. We've discussed the alleged White House pushback, the frustratingly partial release of documents.
Right.
But through it all, the unwavering, deeply personal accounts from the survivors, they just cut through everything else. They constantly remind everyone involved, politicians, the public, the media, of the profound human stakes here.
They keep it grounded in reality.
Exactly. And the whole saga, especially the details about his custody, it just reveals how, even with high-level directives in place, accountability can be incredibly elusive. And the pursuit of truth, real truth, is often this prolonged, multifaceted battle against secrecy and, frankly, entrenched power.
So, as we consider all these conflicting narratives, the official rulings, the political rhetoric on one side, and then the raw, lived experiences of the survivors on the other. What does truth and justice even look like in a case like this? One so shrouded in power, secrecy, and just immense human pain. Is complete transparency ever fully achievable here?
No.
Or is the relentless pursuit of it maybe the most critical form of accountability we can actually hope for?
That might be the fundamental question at the heart of this entire deep dive, isn't it? Is the ultimate goal to uncover every single last detail, no matter how politically uncomfortable or damaging it might be? Or is it maybe more about ensuring the system itself, the justice system, the prison system, is held to account for its failures? The pursuit itself, that relentless pursuit of transparency, even if it never feels perfectly complete, it forces conversations, it challenges the official narratives, it keeps the pressure on. It's a continuous process, I think, that really defines our commitment to justice, even when the path is incredibly difficult.
A powerful thought to end on. We leave you, the listener, with those questions. We invite you to continue to consider the enduring power of persistent voices facing down institutional resistance, and what role you believe informed citizens play in ensuring that justice, however delayed it might be, is never ultimately denied.
Because this conversation, as we've clearly seen today, is very, very far from over.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.